Civilians in the Middle East are being caught in the crossfire of the US and Israel's war against Iran, with strikes hitting homes, hospitals and schools. The UN says that the shockwaves of the war, including airspace closures and disruptions to trade and energy routes, are affecting its ability to respond. Euronews' Maeve McMahon sat down with United Nations Humanitarian Affairs Chief Tom Fletcher. She started by asking him whether the UN is being increasingly sidelined in a world where international law is in retreat.
This is a time of impunity and division and polarisation, and a lot of people are attacking the UN. But every time you hear someone attack the UN, ask yourself what they gain by making us weaker. Because actually, impunity, brutality, polarisation, war, we were built for times like this. This is why we were invented. And look, in the last week, I've lost 4 colleagues on the front lines who've given their lives to go out there and save lives because of the mess the world is in right now. So is the UN perfect? No way. But, I'm not going to accept the attacks that come our way.
Will the UN still exist in 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we represent the imperfections of the world. It's a complicated, messy world. We wish we could do more, actually, to end these conflicts, to send out our peacekeepers and our peacemakers. We can only do that where we get a mandate from the world, from the member states. And right now, the member states are in this kind of transactional, muscular, geopolitical moment where they're pulling apart rather than pulling together. And we've got to be a force for coexistence and solidarity.
And just before the war began, President Trump inaugurated his so-called Board of Peace. Did he get bored of peace very soon?
Well, we look forward to hearing more from the Board of Peace about how they're ending a number of conflicts, apparently around the world right now. I'm dealing with the consequences of so many of those conflicts, whether it's in Sudan or South Sudan or the DRC or Gaza, or I say Lebanon, at this moment. The White House, when I talk to them, are very clear that the Board of Peace is not an alternative to the UN. And certainly the other countries that have joined it have been absolutely categoric that this is not meant to replace the UN. We're still here.
So you don't feel threatened by it?
I don't feel threatened by it. We're a member state organisation of over 190 members. Of course, different groups of countries come together to try and talk about peace or other issues. There's enough conflict in the world right now. If people want to bring some peace, I'm completely relaxed about that.
How many people are internally displaced in Iran?
Hundreds of thousands, we estimate. What's interesting at the moment is that they're not crossing the borders at the scale that we expected. So you've got a lot of instability in those countries of the region. And of course, the economic crisis is driving up that movement of people. But we're not seeing the large numbers of Iranians cross the borders at this stage. And what we're understanding from the local authorities is that local communities are responding and taking people into their homes. But that's a situation we're watching very closely.
And of course, what about potential spillover of refugees coming to Europe, potentially, even though you're not seeing that now yet?
I think we will. Because this crisis can't be put neatly back into a box. Wars don't just end at frontiers, and actions have consequences. And we're in a period globally right now of kind of reckless adventurism in so many places. And of course, civilians will be displaced by that. Civilians will also be displaced by the next wave over the coming years of climate change. For every degree of climate increase, temperature increase, 1 billion people will be on the move from areas that we've lived in for millennia.
And just on that point of people on the move, we've seen thousands internally displaced in Lebanon. What is the situation like there?
Really grim. And my boss, the Secretary General, was in Lebanon at the end of last week. And I spent all weekend on the phone to our humanitarian team there. We were trying to get a convoy of support down to the south of Lebanon, which is taking a real smashing up at the moment. And we had to turn back because of the danger levels. We lost a colleague in Lebanon last week as well. So it's getting more and more dangerous for us to operate, and the needs are going up. We've got tens of thousands displaced, many of them people who were displaced already by previous conflicts.
Do you fear that Lebanon could be the next Gaza?
I do fear that. And in fact, I fear that because that's what we're hearing from some Israeli ministers right now who are speaking in increasingly belligerent language about what they plan to do to Lebanon. It's a country I know well. I was ambassador there for 4 years. It's an extraordinary country. One really interesting development in the last couple of weeks is that for the first time, the Lebanese government themselves are calling for direct negotiations with Israel, which hasn't happened in the past. And so there's potential here to reset the relationship in the region. But the path to that is through dialogue and diplomacy and not through more brutal violence.
And just a final reflection, perhaps. Do you have any hope for the Middle East?
I'm an optimist about humans. I think we have these two competing instincts, one to fight for resource, and we're doing a lot of that right now, and those people are shouting pretty loudly, but another more important one, which is to work together as communities for that resource. And I believe ultimately that is the more powerful instinct that we have. And as long as I believe that, then I'll have hope.